Hi everybody, it's Michael from Story and Heart again, and today I'm going to figure out if the A7 Mark III can replace my A7S Mark II as a low-light video camera. Now, as you can see, I have a ton of cameras, and I need to sell at least one of them because my wife is glaring at me on the inside. Now, this test is a little bit unfair with the A7S Mark II having much larger pixels to eat up all that light compared to the A7 Mark III. But the A7 Mark III is new technology, so we will see what the results are. And just so we're grounded in some reality, we're bringing in the A6500's low-light capabilities, just so we have something off in the corner for us to appreciate the low-light performance of these bad boys a little bit more. Okay, at 800 ISO, the A7 Mark III and the A7S Mark II are clean as a whistle, with the A6500 showing a smidge of noise. At 1600 ISO, the A7S and the A7 Mark III are still tied, but the A6500 has a little bit more noise and it's starting to get a little bit bothersome. At 3200 ISO, you can tell that the A7S has larger grain while the A7 Mark III has finer grain. The A6500 is starting to show even more noise, but it is holding up and I still consider it usable. At 6400 ISO, the A65 is starting to get really muddy ugly. While the A7S and A7 Mark III are still kind of tied, but the A7 Mark III is showing a little bit more color noise. The grain difference between the two are becoming a little bit more apparent. At 12,800 ISO, the A7S and A7 Mark III start to show their differences in terms of noise amount. At 25,600 ISO, the A7S Mark II is showing smoothness superiority in its noise, but of course it's coarser grain while the A7 Mark III is finer grain. And let's just forget about the A6500 at this point. 51,200 ISO is where it gets interesting. You do see a good amount of noise between the two cameras, different kind of noise. It's really up to you what's acceptable or not. The A7 Mark III is still pretty damn good for documentary work. Now at 102,400 ISO, the A7 III is getting to the point of no longer being usable, and the A7S is also looking pretty ugly, but is a little bit smoother. If you want to compare different settings, 51,200 ISO on the A7 Mark III is about what it is on the A7S Mark II at 102,400 ISO. But the grain in the midtones is definitely a whole lot more noticeable on the A7S Mark II, while it's much finer on the A7 Mark III. Overall, the A7 Mark III holds up extremely well versus the A7S, surprisingly so. The results were partially expected and unexpected. So the slight increase of noise is traded off with the finer grain of noise. And that is why I have decided to sell my A7S Mark II so that I could keep this around for both photo and video. Now, if you're only a filmmaker and not doing any photo at all, the A7S Mark II is still amazing, especially if you're shooting in a lot of low light. So I will recommend people still consider holding on to this camera. Okay, I hope that test was useful for you guys. We'll be doing some other tests such as rolling shutter in the next couple of episodes, so please like and subscribe to know when that comes out. And please join the discussion down below if you have any questions. See you next time.